Kia ora and welcome. Welcome to another episode of The Leadership Lounge. I'm Katie, I'm your host. Delighted to be back again for another episode of chatting, sitting down. The Leadership Lounge is a space for you as a healthcare leader to take that moment to breathe, to pause, to get that reflection, that fresh perspective on the work that you're doing every day, because rarely do you get that moment, even time to stop to think. So this is that moment. And my aim and my goal and my hope, or whatever word you want to hang on to today, is that you get a nugget from this. You can go, okay, I can go and put that into action. Or I can have a think about this, or I can keep the conversation going. None of this is rocket science. None of this is significant work. These are about practical, pragmatic ideas, tweaks, suggestions, things, that kind of stuff. Sometimes it's about you as a leader and your own personal development, because that work never stops, right? Sometimes it's about the culture, the environment of the team that you are working with or leading, or the people that you are working with, because leadership in healthcare is more than a role or a title, right? And sometimes it's about the work that you do. How do you get more effective, efficient? How do you actually tackle some challenges or some practical things? So this week, I thought I'd share a tool that's been on my mind for me to use with a team. And so I've been thinking about it a little bit more. I'm thinking, I wonder if that would be useful. So I've got thinking about it. And it's a tool called the SWOT analysis. So SWOT. Now, if you've not come across this is quite a well-used, kind of been around forever kind of tool. And there's the SWOT tool, and I'll explain a bit more about that. But I've also got in there that is a tool called the SOAR tool. So there's lots of these tools, right? And I think a key point to start at the front end of this is that these are just that. They are tools, and using the right tool at the right time, or using it in the right context or at the right moment, really important. And also, it's not the only thing you use, right? And the moment we're in the midst of, and as I say we, I mean Adam, in the midst of decorating the house, you don't just use one thing, you have an array of stuff. Oh dear Lord, do you have an array of stuff? Anyway, so you have several of these tools, and it's about understanding that. So I thought I'd go into today, this week, about the SWOT analysis tool. So it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And if you're thinking about the SOAR tool, stands for, I'm going to have to check on that one because I always get them. It is strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. So again, there's a nuance within them. And again, it's about context and the situation and what you're using it for. So the reason you're using it is really important. For both of them, you can use them in different settings. You can use them as a personal tool. I have pretty much always done a SWOT analysis every time I've started a new job, for me personally. But you can also use them with a team, and you can also use them applied across the organisation. Now, this is where I get nerdy for a little bit, because, as you know, I generally do a little bit of digging around, a little bit of research around the topic, just to make sure I've got anything latest, or if there's any other perspectives. I love getting the contradictory opinion or thinking to what I generally hold. I really think that's really useful. So I do a little bit of reading, and I'll make my scribbly notes that are usually more of a guideline than any kind of script, to be fair. And I found an article, and I will pop the link into the show notes, that really challenged the history of the SWOT analysis. So there's a few articles that kind of suggest that it's had its time and it's no longer really practical. But this article did a lot of research into the research of where the SWOT analysis tool, and how had it actually evolved and developed, and where was it used, and who should it be credited to. Now, I've not got any of those details. Like you say, if you feel nerdy and you really want to get into the history, because this article, I thought it might have been a short one, no, and I really did get sucked in. It was a fascinating kind of like trail down this, how they found it all out, and then what they did find. So, yes, came from the 60s, but one of the things that I took out of it, it started off as being called the soft tool, not the SWOT, but quickly kind of got shifted. Originally in the 60s, and it was a kind of a co-creative strategic document. And how they used it in this research where they've uncovered where it first kind of came from and got developed from, was they actually sent this tool out to, not in the format that we see it today, to be fair, out to all the managers and asked these questions around: what are your strengths? What is the thing that your team does really well? What are the weaknesses? In the soft version, it was about failures or faults. And what are the opportunities? And what are the threats? And so it had all of those kind of questions. And then they pulled it together, and they could start to analyse all this information that had come from, and remember, this is business context, not healthcare context, that had come from all these managers from around the company, and they could start to see some very key themes. And the phrasings that they used, I kind of liked it, because they said, hold on, let's just check the notes. Oh no, I can't find the notes. But what I have spotted, this is so funny, what I have spotted in my notes is, again, about the context. Where this evolved from, it was the era of bigness. It was about everything becoming big and growth. And it was also the era of long-term planning, where being able to write your 20-year plan was really, really important. Now, I think over the last few years, and particularly since COVID, we know that those things are harder. The unpredictability and the uncertainty around everything in the world means we are less confident around some of those longer term plans. Having said that, the NHS has got a 10-year plan out at the moment. So, there's an element of it. But this was the era of when that all sort of started. And they were really looking for the planning issues that people face. Because it was kind of like, if we've got to make a 20-year strategy or a forward plan, what are the issues that our people have? And so they asked everyone, which is quite cool. The note that I was looking for was, when they analysed it and pulled it all together, was they created what they called families of issues and families of solutions. And so it was about shifting from these issues to solutions. And they had this richness to this entire data that they had brought in by using the SWOT tool. Now, they hadn't started with the SWOT tool. They had started with a whole lot of other questions, and they'd refined it down to these 4 areas. And the other thing that he had done alongside this was actually map it along with all their stakeholders. What do all the various stakeholders require from us and our business and the work that we do? So when you see the SWOT analysis today, you'll see it's often a 1-page sheet with a few prompts. And to be fair, I've created one and I've used one, and I share those all the time. And I've got one that I've updated and just made a little bit sparkly for you, as you do. But this was it was actually a much deeper and richer tool than what we see today. So this was more about the history and where it's come from. And I think it's understanding what I got from this genesis of where it's come from is that, it's about being able to involve many voices, which is really useful if you think about the amount of change and the amount of demands and expectations and going on. If whoever is at the top of your organisational tree, whatever context you're in, if they sent out a load of these and they actually got this data back to analyse from around the organisation, how useful would that be in terms of understanding what some of their risks might be? So I liked the genesis of it as a prompt for how much more we could use it if we thought about it a bit more deeply. However, you go, okay, get on with it, Kate. That's the history, but how do I use it now? Or more importantly, why would I want to use it now? So again, I think this is a point that I raised right at the beginning there about this time and moment to pause and think. We are often in this reactive firefighting, just get stuff done, to-do list ever growing. And this opportunity to stop and pause and think is really important because, and this is the why part, because it's in those moments that we challenge our assumptions. Now, I have run down the route in the last few weeks of assumptions and leading to misunderstanding, not in any major way, but it's like, oh, I thought you meant this kind of assumption. So this tool is one of those things that allows you to challenge assumptions. It's also another reason to use it, can help you uncover those blind spots, the things that you don't know. Because if you're using it collaboratively, you're using it in a sort of a reflective space with some really decent prompts to help you, and you're using it honestly is really, really important. We'll get to that bit. But you can really help uncover some of your blind spots. Now, with those two things there, you can then get new insights. You're like, right, so maybe if we thought about it like this, or maybe if we approach that. And those things together can help you develop your strategy. So even if you're looking at what's our strategy for the next 6 months, it's going to help you. And alongside that, you get insights into being able to, how do you mitigate your risks? What are the best goals for us to then focus on, decide what our goals are going to be, and define what those goals are. So it gives you a lot of support in that planning tool. So it's a strategy planning tool. All right then, so let's get into some of the details of it. So if you're considering, I'll just quickly run through the 4 prompts and what you're looking for in those areas to kind of help you. So we start off with strengths. Always a great space to start with the strengths question, as much as you might want to jump to the weaknesses or the opportunities or the threats. Starting with strengths is good because it's going to give you some energy and some momentum. So at this point, and again, remember, context is really, really important. Personal, team, organisation, doing it individually and pulling resources, or doing it as a shared collaborative conversation. I've done both. They work equally well. Setting the scene around what it is, explaining the tool really, really helps. So the other thing I'll pop in is a link to a video. There's a few videos out there, but I've watched a few of them today, and some of them are terrible. So let's be honest, I'm going to pop one that is not terrible in the show notes for you to save you some time. All right then. So step 1, ask yourself what you or your team or your organisation does well. What are the resources that you've got? What do others consider yourself? What do others consider as the key benefits that you offer? So what are the things that you as a team do that everyone's like, oh, thank goodness they do that. And they do that really, really well. Now, the strengths part, it's important that it's very internally focused. It's what's within you that you've got. Sometimes it can be things that distinguish you from anyone else. And in a business world, they're often talking, and if you look at some other articles, they often talk about this in terms of analysis of competitive analysis. I'm hoping that it feels less like that within the healthcare setting, but it could be things like, I've got a really experienced leader. I've got a really senior team. So it could be things like that. Some of the prompts that I use in the handout that I've got, oh no, it's just disappeared, the handout that I've got, that's it, there it is. It's things like, what can you do that others can't? And then what is currently working well? You know, sometimes we can focus so much on all the stuff that doesn't work that we forget about the stuff that is working well. So it's a good reflective spot. And sometimes you do need those outside voices into that to help you figure all that out as well. All right, so that's strengths. So second step is weaknesses. Now, this is the point where that honesty is really, really important, because if you're not going to be honest with yourself about what your personal weaknesses are, or get some feedback on that, or really create a safe space for your team to share what those weaknesses are, then you're not going to be able to spot the opportunities and what you need to know. So that idea about mitigating risks or noticing your blind spots, you just won't get. So honesty is really, really important. Hand in hand with that is obviously psychological safety. Pop a link to the podcast where we chatted about psychological safety as an introduction as well. So this can be things about what are those things that are just where you're struggling with? What's your Achilles heel? What do you know that you could improve? You know, you could think about things, whether that comes from feedback. So maybe it's patient experience comments, maybe it's staff comments. What do others see as your weaknesses? Again, so it's about that feedback kind of mechanism loop. What have you heard about what people say about you, or that you've been told about you? Could be from data, from incidents or KPIs that you've got. It's like, actually, we always struggle to meet this. I wonder why that is. So you're not trying to overanalyze it. You're just like listing them at this point. This is about list creation. I love a list creation. So this is list creation. All right. So there's your weaknesses. Next step, move on to opportunities. All right. So now you're now thinking a little bit more outward facing in this, because this is about what are the opportunities based on the context. All right. So again, this might be, and I'll keep coming back to this, about when you're doing this or the context you're doing it in. New team starting up, or you've been given a new project to do, or you've got a new job. So the opportunities are about what's that stuff that's a bit more outward facing, a bit more external at this point. So an opportunity might be to develop your network, or it might be an opportunity might be to deliver before the expected end date. There are some things around that. So again, most of the articles pinpoint this around competitiveness and external things. But there are also opportunities, things like, we can see this new government policy that's going to be coming in, or we can see some social trends that are actually opportunities. So you can see some stuff about what's going on externally, a bit more outward facing in this opportunity space. It's quite exciting. Having started a new job recently, my mind has been, and the team that I'm working in, we're in this state at the moment, and there's opportunities like all over the place, and we're actually at the point of like going, okay, where do we start? We've got so many, but this is why this is why I've been thinking about SWOT analysis, obviously, because it helps you capture everything so you can make a strategic plan out of it. All right. Fourth step then is the threats. So like weaknesses, it's about identifying those things that are a bit more outward facing. So again, it could be the government policy again, it could be the things that are coming in, it could be about a restructure, it could be things like a change in a standard, or it could be an assessment that's coming up around stuff. So there's a lot of things that can come up that could influence what your threats might be. And generally not as much fun to do, to be honestly. So it's the threat part, and it can be a bit grey area between the two. But how are your weaknesses impacting you? That is the threat. So you've got the weakness, but what's the difference that weakness is making? Technology, big one in this. What are the technology threats around you at the moment? The other one, finances. That's the other big chewy one, isn't it? What is the finance stuff? What's that going on in relation to the team or the department, the organisation, or you personally around stuff? So there's the 4 areas: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You run that through as you can do it as where you're just all shouting out different ideas, popping them down on a post-it note. Often, I think a top tip if you're doing this within a team is to get people to write their ideas down on a post-it note first. So you've got that quieter time where you're just reflecting on your own, and then have the conversation where you're feeding off each other later and building on the different ideas. So talk through what a SWOT analysis is, why it's so useful. A bit of the history got thrown in there just for good luck, and the fact that a reminder that it is a tool to use, but not the only tool, okay? And that there are a number of different moments where using this is a really quite idea. Different opportunities. That sentence made absolutely no sense. There are different moments where you can use it in different ways. Now, sometimes it's also a useful tool to do on a regular basis. Let's just check in with us as to how we're doing. And I think there's some good ideas about when you're thinking about it from a personal perspective. There's discovering these things, these growth opportunities, or the prospects or your potential that you might not have noticed. But you can also really pull out some ideas for improvement and how to manage things that could hinder that progress. Love the fact that it always starts with your strengths and you're building from that place of what is working well, and then you're adding to that. So like you say, you get to challenge assumptions, uncover those blind spots, get new insights, and that then leads you to be able to develop your strategy that can include mitigating any risks and defining and deciding what your goals should be. All right. The SOAR analysis, very, very simple, and I'll quickly run through that one and some of the prompts that can fit with this one. And I've used this a couple of times, and I'll explain where I've struggled in the different moments. So strengths are the same. What are you excelling at? What are you most proud of? What makes you unique? Opportunities. What are the gaps that you could step into? That's quite a good one, actually. What or you could do something different in, or what do you wish you could do differently? That's quite good as well. Aspirations. This is a bit more visionary, I suppose, and this is about what do you want to achieve in the future? How can you make a difference? And what should your routine or your the weekly routine of you yourself personally or your team look like if that's what you want to aspire to? And then results are about how do you know when you've achieved your goals, or what is expected to be delivered in your roles, and what measures are going to tell you you're on track? Now, I've run into trouble with results when there wasn't clarity from the organisation as a whole as to what our goals were or what we're expected to deliver. So you've got to have goals and expectations in place, or you've got to be able to set them. You've got to set our goal like, I want to be able to do X in 6 months' time. Then you can answer those questions. So results, you need to have a little bit more information into where to answer those questions. So learning from my mistakes, I ran aground slightly when doing that in a team when we actually realised that we didn't have clarity on what our goals were and what we're expected to deliver. So at a time of change, there can often be some uncertainty in that space around results. So the SWOT might be better, but it's useful to look at the questions. And really, you're just basically trying to engage as many people as possible in your team or your environment or within yourself to pull together some information that's going to help you make some plans. All right. So that's where we're at. SWOT analysis. So what I'm going to have for you is a list of really cool further bits to go and explore, so videos and links on that, and the link to the really nerdy article about the history. Very cool, I have to say. I can't believe how much time I spent on that, but it was good. And the sparkly new SWOT and SOAR analysis template that I have put up. In fact, I say it's new. I've generally only shared it with people and teams that I've worked with. It's not been up on my website as a thing to download, so it is kind of new and sparkly. So there you go. That's quite exciting. All right. Lovely to talk through that one. It really helped me get some clearer on some of that stuff, and I hope that that's given you the confidence or the interest or the little bit of that could work. Curiosity is the word I'm looking for. Struggling here slightly to pick up the template, go and look at some of the links and say, okay, is this the right moment? Is there an opportunity here for me to use this? Am I going to get something out of this? Do I need to understand a bit more about what's going on around me right now? Am I about to step into a new job? Do I want a new job? What are the things that are going on for you, your team, and your organisation? And how can the SWOT analysis right now, or maybe in a few months, be useful for you? All right. Hope you find that really handy. Whatever it is that you're doing, remember you're doing an amazing job. You're showing up every day, and that is phenomenal. Please do take care, and I'll be back next week with another episode of The Leadership Lounge. You take care.